All right, so we're going to look at 2 hearts, number 4. So everybody had a question that looks like this. That may be not exactly the same question, but it looks like it. So 2 hearts, number 4 says the sine of negative 100 degrees, and we want to know if it's positive or negative, and how do we know? All right, so what's the first thing that we should think about? Ella? Yeah, where is it? Let's draw it. 100, negative 100 degrees. So here I am on my regular labeling. This is not the compass. This is my regular labels, right? Negative, how do I deal with that? Negative 100. How do I deal with that? I go the other way. So I start here always, and I'm going to go negative 100. Well, this would be 90, right? Remember, every quadrant's 90. So wouldn't it put me over here? In this quadrant, if you made a triangle, this would be negative and that would be negative, and the hypotenuse is always positive. Right? So we want to know the sine. Sine, here's your angle, opposite over hypotenuse. Negative? The sine is negative in quadrant 3. Yeah. Ella?
Same quiz number 3.
Find the exact value of the sine of negative pi over 3. What was probably the first thing we were going to do with that one? Well, change it into degrees, right? So pi over 3 is 180 over 3, so this is the sine of negative 60. So we just talked about how to draw a negative angle. So negative 60 would look like this. Right down. And that's a 30, 60, 90. So we know across from the 60 is root 3. Right? And we need the sine. So the sine is opposite. Oh, wait a minute. I need a negative on there, don't I? Down. So sine is negative root 3 over 2. So the answer should be negative root 3 over 2. Jada? 3 hearts, number 5, you say? That's the same problem as this one, only it's the tangent of 5 pi over 6. So the tangent of 5 pi over 6, did you change that into degrees? Okay, what did you get?
Like my answer?
How many degrees?
30. Yeah, I got 30.
Okay, well, 180 divided by 6 is 30, but times 5 it's 150. So you're actually looking at 150 degrees.
Oh yeah, 150 then minus 180.
Oh, okay, so yeah, so then you drew 150, and it was over here like this. You said, okay, that's 150, so this has to be 30. That's right. So we have 1, 2, root 3, and that one's negative this time. And we want the tangent, which is opposite over adjacent, so it'd be 1 over negative root 3, or negative root 3 over 3.
I just put that, I thought it was one of them questions where it was like just like the degree, like what you got when you said
No, I see. So you just put 150 or something?
I just put 30.
Okay, no. When it says what's the tangent, your answer needs to be a fraction. Or sine or cosine, any of them, it's a fraction.
One heart, question 5.
1 heart, question 5 says if the cosine is 3/5 and we're in quadrant 4, so they tell you you're in quadrant 4, you're going to draw the triangle in quadrant 4, and the cosine is 3/5, you're finding the tangent. The question is, what's the tangent? Well, we run into this kind of situation often. Every time we run into this, What do we do next? Pythagorean theorem, right? Every time. So, did you do the Pythagorean theorem? What'd you get?
4.
Okay, actually -4?
Yeah.
But yeah, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, so that would be -4. What's the tangent then? Opposite over adjacent, -4/3. Huh?
I didn't make it negative.
Okay, yeah. Big, that's we make so many sign errors, guys. You really have to stop. When that picture is drawn, any place other than quadrant 1, make yourself put the negatives in. Because there's going to be negatives in every picture unless it's quadrant 1. All right, I'll do one more. What's the last
Discord.
one? Yes.
Could you let my computer into the Zoom? My iPad's are drawn up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, what did you say, Jada? 3 hearts. Number 4 is a sketch. Okay, so when we,
We're doing the practice tests, right?
right now we're reviewing the quiz we took. But we're getting ready to do the practice quiz, yes. So 1/2 sine 3x. Okay? So the first thing I would suggest when you're drawing is just put the shape down. Get the shape down. So it's a sine. I know a sine starts at the origin, looks like this. That number out in front gives me my vertical labels. It gives me the amplitude of the sine and the cosine. Remember, tangents have no amplitude, so if there's a number in front of a tangent, I ignore it. But that gives, on a sine or cosine, that gives me the height. So my amplitude is 1/2. Now these labels, the top of the hill, where it crosses, the bottom of the valley, and where it ends, should be 90, 180, 270, and 360. They should be the labels around the circle. But in this case, they've been divided by 3. Remember, this number, whatever it is, divides always the normal labels, divides the normal labels. So this should be 30, 60, 90, and 120. So that's your answer. Okay? William,
So what do you do on that if there's no amplitude?
what do you mean? If there's no number in front, then the amplitude's 1. There's an understood 1. There. All right, so put that quiz away, and we are now going to go ahead and pick up where we left off at some point, which according to my records, I hope they match yours, is practice test number 2, 5C. Is that right? We're on practice test 2, problem 5, ready for C. Okay. All right, so let's, there. Sine is 1/√2. Now, please note that while you will have a calculator to help you with arithmetic, this is a find the exact value problem. So work has to be shown. No work, no credit. Find exact value means do it by hand. So, I'm going to draw a picture. I do that in every problem practically. And this is a positive number. So when I see this notation and a positive number, I'm going to draw my picture in quadrant 1. I need to know that. That's just one of those things I need to memorize. So when I see the inverse notation and a positive, I'm going to draw it in quadrant 1. And the sign is opposite over hypotenuse. So at this point, since it's a do by hand problem, you need to recognize that triangle. Do you recognize that that's a 45-degree angle there? And guys, that's the answer. The answer is 45 degrees because this notation means find the angle. So you just did. You found that angle. It's 45 degrees. Now D is a little bit harder because the number is negative. So when I see this notation and it's negative, I know I have rules to follow. This is a cosine. Where do I draw my triangle if it's an inverse cosine negative? It's the second. Some of them are in the fourth. Some of them are in the fourth. Sine and tangent are in the fourth. Cosine is in the second. And secant are in the second.
Can you say that again? What is it?
Everything else is in the fourth. But that should already be in your notes, written down, because anyway. All right, so cosine is negative 1/2. Adjacent over hypotenuse. Now again, if you're doing this without a calculator, you have to recognize that. 1 and 2, this is root 3, which makes this angle how big? The one where I'm pointing right here. 60. Because we know that the 60 is across from the root 3. Now here's the tricky part. It shouldn't be tricky, but some of you are making it tricky. The answer isn't 60. If we knew 60, it would be in quadrant 1. The answer is this. You have to start at 0. So how big is this big purple angle if it stops right here, which is 60 degrees before it gets to 180? 120, that is exactly right, 120. That's 120 degrees. 120 degrees, because it stops 60 degrees before it gets to 120. So it's 180 minus 60. 180 minus 60. All right. Tangent 7 pi over 4. What's the first thing we're going to do with this? This is a different kind of problem. It doesn't have that notation. So I'm just going to do 7.
15.
Pardon me?
180 divided by 4 is 45.
Yep.
So there's 350.
Yep, so exactly. So the first thing we're going to do is change it into degrees so we know where to draw it. Where's 315? Remember, these are your labels. We're not on the compass. So isn't 315 down here?
Fourth quadrant.
Yep, down here in the fourth quadrant. There's 315. Now you need to label the sides of this triangle, so you need to know how big that angle is. How much would it be if you went all the way around? 360. We didn't go 360 though, we stopped here, right? We went 315. So how much more do we have to go to get the full 360? 45. 360 minus 315, that's exactly right. The minute you put a 45 there, you know these are 1s and that's a root 2. And
Wouldn't the 1 be negative?
exactly, that one's got to be negative. Look where you are, right? If we're not in quadrant 1, there's some negatives in there somewhere, and it's never this.
How come the radical 2 isn't negative?
The hypotenuse, you asked that same question the other day, Mary Kate. I'm going to answer it the same way. Hypotenuse is never negative, period.
Okay.
The hypotenuse or the radius is never negative. Okay, so I need the tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. -1. Couple more on the back, just like that. Oh, wait, I just did one. One more left. Cosine 3 pi over 2. All right, let's change 3 pi over 2 into degrees. What do we have? Our cosine. What's the cosine of 3 pi over 2? 270. So we're going to find the cosine of 270.
Isn't this a circle there?
And it's down here, isn't it? 270 is on the line. So what do I do when my angle is on the line?
It's undefined, isn't it?
Well, I gotta draw a circle. I'm not sure if it's gonna be undefined. It can be. But remember, if your angle is on the circle, you are going to have, or if your angle is on an axis, you're going to have to draw the circle. And the circle you draw is going to have a radius of 1. So you're going to come down 1, straight down 1 to get to that point, right? What is that point going to be then if I come straight down 1?
-1, 0.
Watch it. 0, -1. You got to be careful. First comes the x. I'm not going sideways, so x is 0, y is -1. That's the point, 0, -1. So x is 0 and y is -1. What is cosine? X over r. So if I put x over r, 0 over 1, that is not undefined. 0 over 1 is okay. 0 over 1 is 0. X over r. Remember, if you draw your angle and you land on an axis, then you have to use the circle. You can't draw a triangle if your angle lands right on an axis.
Is the radius always 1?
Yep,
Or like
when
right
you
now?
draw the circle, yep. Doesn't have to be, but that's the way we're doing it because it's always the same. It'll work it every time. Okay, in which quadrant is the cosine negative and the cosecant positive? So cosine negative, cosecant positive. Remember, less than 0 means negative, greater than 0 means positive. Now, cosine is associated with which letter? We just talked about it. Cosine is associated with x. So when you tell me cosine is negative, you're telling me x is negative. So where on the coordinate plane would the x be negative? Here? No, not here. How about here? Is x negative over here? Yep. I'll put a check mark. Is x negative here? Yep. Put a check mark. How about here? Nope. Okay. So far, I've got it narrowed down. Now, cosecant is the reciprocal of the sine, and sine is associated with y.
So y has to be negative 2.
Y has to be positive. So where of these two options, this is all we have left, which is the only place where y is positive. Quadrant 2. So the answer to the question is quadrant 2, because that's where x is negative and y is positive. Cosine is x, sine is y. And cosecant is the same as sine, reciprocal of sine. All right, now we're sketching. And you've got one of each. So we're sketching a tangent and a sine and a cosine. So the first thing that I would do is draw a sketch of the curves. Kids, you have to know the basic shapes, okay? So we know that a tangent has an asymptote, and then a squiggly line in between, right? This tangent is negative, which means what? The squiggly, that's right, Daz, the squiggly goes down. The normal squiggle for a tangent goes up. That's what you have memorized, hopefully. But since this has a negative, it goes the other direction. It's upside down. Now, this one's a sine. My shape of a sine, I'm just reviewing all my shapes here first. This is the shape of my sine curve. Period. That's what a sine looks like. And then, my cosine shape starts at the top and ends at the top. Remember, every one of these curves, but your sine and cosine start and stop at the same place. Wherever they start, it's where they stop. Now, all I need to do now is put the labels in. Okay? Now, does the tangent have any vertical labels? No, because the tangent has no amplitude. So there's no amplitude for the tangent. There's no vertical labels. Does the sine have vertical labels? Yes. You have to say how high up and down the hills go. Well, we just talked to William about this. They're going to go up and down 1. So the amplitude of this is 1. Now what about my cosine? Again, you have to label the top and bottom, so won't it be 5 and negative 5? And that means the amplitude is 5. Even if there had been a number in front of this, like a 3 or something, it doesn't matter. There is no amplitude for a tangent. There are no vertical labels on there. All right, so now we have to do our horizontal labels. Now for a tangent, they're normally negative 90 and 90. But, see this number right here? He divides those. So we have to divide by a half. So negative 90 divided by a half is negative 90 times 2 over 1. So these labels are actually negative 180 and 180, which makes the period what? 360. Now, these labels, there's 4 of them, and they are normally just the quadrant numbers, 90, 180, 270, 360. But we've divided this one also by 3. So the actual labels are 30, 60, 90, and 120. Making my period 120. These labels, horizontal labels, are exactly the same. Normally, 90, 180, 270, 360. But these have been divided by 4. Remember, whatever number is right here divides all of these. It's a division. So, 22 and a half. 45, 67 and a half, and 90. Making that period 90. Is that right? There, I just did all the graphs. That's how you do it. It's easy. Practice. Okay. Now I already have this videoed, so.